So go on, mate.
Tell you what, he makes more sense than Havertz. I'll give you that, Mason. He makes a lot more sense than Havertz.
You think?
Why is that so personal?
I'm not getting personal. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. I think.
What's the Havertz
Why are
agenda,
you
bro? He's not
saying
your
that,
club
Don?
anymore.
Don, why are you saying that? Kai Havertz,
we've
every
actually-
every coach that came to Chelsea in the last 3 years started Havertz. I'm gonna have the same energy. 65 million for Arsenal. I'm expecting Havertz to go in and play good football, provide something extra to this Arsenal team. Mason Mount the same. So, but why you're saying that Mason Mount is a better player than Kai Havertz, while coaches played Kai Havertz more than Mason Mount?
I disagree with that, because Mason was played a lot under Frank. He was played a lot under Tuchel. Even Gareth Southgate was starting this guy, every single game, like in major tournaments, as well as like the friendlies and that. But when you look at Mason's time in the first team in comparison to Havertz, Mason's shown us a lot more than what Havertz has. Like, this guy's a two-time player of the season for Chelsea. He put up GNA, playing on the right, playing on the left, playing in midfield as well. So there's a lot of tangible evidence to show that Mason can actually play in that midfield role, because we've seen him come through at Vitesse. Even Derby, he was good in that 8 role. So like, there's a lot more evidence to say this makes more sense to play in that role that Ten Hag's bringing him into. Whereas Havertz, we haven't seen him succeed in that left centre mid role. That's why I think it'll be the better deal, and it makes more sense with Mason Mount and Havertz if we don't compare the two.
Left centre mid, is that what we're expecting Kai Havertz to play?
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying.
No, he won't play.
I'm only going off of what they're saying, but that's how I would look at it from a United point of view.
Babs, how do you feel about the Kai Havertz deal? Now it's done, 65 million. I've read 200 or 250,000 pound a week. How do you feel about it personally, mate?
I'm actually more excited about the unknown than anything. Like, in terms of the player himself, I'll be honest, at Chelsea he was underwhelming at times, but I also believe he's been misprofiled. I think people think he's more of a goal scorer. I don't think he's coming into Arsenal to just score goals. I think what Mikel Arteta probably sees is his link-up play in between the lines, that little comfortable, ability to link up the play in the area. I think, if anything, the profile I'd look at to compare him to is maybe you look at Julian Alvarez at Man City, where he's a striker, but he plays alongside the striker. He plays behind Haaland at times, or he'll play as a secondary striker. He's more of a link-up player than anything. Alvarez is a better goal scorer, obviously, though. So I'm very excited to see what Arteta has planned. There will be a fundamental change that I don't think fans know yet. But every single window under Arteta, there's been this change that no one kind of expected, and I think Havertz will be part of that. There's no way that he's chased him, paid £60+ million, and put him as one of the highest earners and not have a specific plan for Havertz. So that's where the excitement comes from.
Yeah, I get that. I do get that. Anyone think it's a bad bit of business for Arsenal?
It's a
Chelsea
risk.
fans?
It's a risk. It's an absolute risk. 65 million for this guy.
We're saying it's a risk, but if you look at the options they've got in that kind of attacking number 10 kind of, like, they've got loads now. So we're saying it's a risk, but even if he just comes in right now, even as a squad player, it's better than what they had before. It's actually better than what they had before. Forget the amount they're paying. He's not coming in right now, and I'm not looking like, he's starting over Odegaard, or he's starting over Martinelli on the left, or he's starting over Gabriel Jesus. But to have someone like that off the bench, that's what you want. You want squad depth.
They're not bringing him off the bench, though. He's going to start in the 11.
Not necessarily. I think.
But there's not necessarily. Where's the confirmation for that?
Yeah, here's what I'll say.
If Rice comes in, if they get Rice.
Sorry, let Babs. Sorry, JJ. Let Babs as a Gunnar. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Sorry.
I don't think he'll start straight away, but he can start games. I think fans need to get out of this idea that you just have one starter. If we want to compete with Man City, you need to have multiple starters. So at times, Havertz will be on the bench, but at times he'll start games. I think it's less about starts now, more about minutes. How many minutes does Havertz play next season? And I think with Arsenal being in the Champions League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Premier League, often, we were talked about last year, Arsenal giving up the FA Cup and stuff. How can we change that now? It's by signing a first-team caliber player who might not start every week, but that's what you want. You want to have the Mahrez off the bench. You want to have that type of option where sometimes he'll start, sometimes he won't. But I think Havertz he'll play an important role in the first team next season. He'll play a lot of minutes.
Price tag. This is my thing. Yeah. Price tag again. If you have a player that went to Chelsea for £68 million, and me and Don talked about this 3 years ago, he was great at Bayer Leverkusen. He had like 17 goals a season, one season, and like 12 the second season. He was still 20 years old, and he went to Chelsea, played 3 years, didn't perform. I was expecting Arsenal to say, you know what, Here's 35, 40 million. That's what he's worth now. And then we're going to improve this guy. We're going to trust Arteta to bring the best out of him after these stinky 3 years. But to go and literally just pay kind of the same money that Chelsea paid 3 years ago is too much for me. For like, I think you're taking a player that didn't perform in the last 3 years and assuming that he's going to come in and play the same way he played at Leverkusen.
Go on.
Go on, bro.
I was going to say, are you sure it was 68 million pounds that Chelsea paid? Because I'm pretty sure
this is the reported 80 million euros is the transfer fee.
Isn't that? But that's the base fee. Surely is add-ons involved. So surely them winning the Champions League.
By the end of it, yeah. By the end of it, yeah. But at the time, the amount that we paid is what.
Yeah. So the 60 million pounds that Arsenal paying is including add-ons. So the base might be lower. The base may be lower, and I think what I saw today is an example of why Arsenal are taking longer for Rice than they got Havertz deal done, because Havertz was more instalments based. Chelsea were willing to accept £70 million a year or so, whereas West Ham want 50-50 straight up for Rice. So I think with Havertz it's a risk, of course, but any transfer has a risk behind it. There's guaranteed surefire transfers that fans thought would work out. I'll give you an example. Last year, Yves Bissouma, bargain, right? He's going to be the biggest hit ever. And fans thought it was a guaranteed success. He goes there and he hasn't quite worked out. So every transfer has risk. I get the Havertz stuff because he hasn't worked out at Chelsea, but I think Mikel sees a talent that was fantastic at Leverkusen. And if we had signed the Leverkusen Havertz, there'd be more excitement. But I get the pessimism.
But honestly, I don't think it's coming in to be on the bench though. I don't see you guys paying over 200k a week, 60 million. The way you're, persisting with him to bench him, especially when Xhaka's supposed to be leaving, and every Arsenal fan I'm speaking to, a few articles I'm seeing online, everyone's saying he's going to come in to play that left centre mid. So I don't think you're going to pay that much money. Like, Arsenal have money, but we know that you guys dilly-dally about paying for players and stuff, right? So realistically, I just don't see him coming in and not starting games. I don't see it.
No, he will start. But I'm saying he's not a guaranteed starter. There will be games where he will sit on the bench, and he's not like he's going to be our, Odegaard captain starting week in, week out. And you need to have that now. So yeah, I think he'll start games. He'll start a majority of games, but it'll depend on the game state. If we're up against a Man City, you're not going to play Havertz, Odegaard, and a part of your Rice in midfield. You're going to have a bit more defensive assurity. But if you're playing up against a deep block, a team that wants to park the bus, you're going to have Havertz alongside Odegaard. It gives Arsenal options.
Yeah, look, I agree with what people are saying. I think it's a risk. But like the Mount, I'm going to keep the same energy because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Again, I look at Arteta's transfer record and it's good. It's very good. So the fact that he wants him so desperately as well to pay him this amount of money, and I know Chelsea fans don't want to hear this because whenever you sell someone, you essentially want them to not do very well. Other than when you had Hazard go to Real Madrid, I think there was a hope that he'd go there and prove he was good, as good as Ronaldo. That worked out. You sometimes get those feelings, but generally a player leaves. You never really want them to do as well, unless they're stepping down. I'm sure Liverpool fans would like to see James Milner do well at Brighton as an example, but you get my point. It's going to be a very intriguing one to see. There's some super chats here. First one says, AA says, big up Terry and Babs. Kai Havertz, the new Dennis Bergkamp.
That's a new notion now on the internet.
Is it?
Do you know what was crazy? It's because of Thomas Tuchel as well. He was the one who started this. Thomas Tuchel said, I see Bergkamp, Van Persie, and someone else in Havertz. And so when a manager says that, everyone starts saying, but if he sees it, then I can see it as well. But it's a mad shout.
They picked it and started like tweeting it and talking about it. The new Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah. Crazy.
That is definitely a crazy one. This from Tevin, long time no see. Tevin says, now it's not the time for meltdowns, but if Arsenal don't get this done, actually I'll come back to that one. I thought it was about Kai Havertz. Anything about Rice we'll come on to later. Terry, you said that all of Arteta's signings pay off. Zinchenko is defensively vulnerable, liability. Someone's in a noisy background. I'm going to mute that. I'm not too sure who that is. Sorry. Vulnerable, liability, and Jesus average output. When will you be honest? So again, I think there are some defensive deficiencies with Zinchenko, but overall, I think he was a brilliant signing at £35 million. Gabriel Jesus, we all knew he wasn't going to be prolific and score 30 goals a season, but his leadership, his ability, his creativity, his energy, his press, the goals and outputs he did have were a big factor, in my opinion, in putting. And I don't know about what you said last season, Kay, but a team that everybody predicted to miss out on top four, that man helped put them into a title race. So again, I disagree with you. I'm not saying they're the greatest signings in Arsenal's history, but they've been
they're
a
not
resounding.
flops.
Yeah, they're not flops. They've been a resounding success so far, in my opinion. So, thanks for the super chat. So Arsenal basically paid 65 million for some squad depth.
Competitive, bro. Why do people just think we're just signing bench players? The whole idea is you sign players that can play in the first team, but no one's guaranteed then. And that's where you have a competitive squad. That's what Man City have, you know. That's why if Champions League final, Kevin De Bruyne goes off injured, on comes Phil Foden. We need to have that level of depth. And if we don't sign players like Havertz, then we're not going to have that sort of options.
So the question for you then, Babs, do you think that Havertz will move the needle for you then and actually help you win the league?
It depends on the ceiling of where Arteta plays him, you know. For all we know, if he's not playing as a false nine and he does play as a left-sided 8 as an example, he could explode there. He could have a very good season. So I've seen Mikel Arteta transform a defensive midfielder who was getting red cards, getting yellow cards in Granit Xhaka and produce 7 goals, 7 assists. So if you can coach something like out of Xhaka, I think with the what fundamentals Havertz has, there is potential to explode.
Oh, but come on, we didn't need Mikel to know that that's not Xhaka's position. We all used to say that Xhaka's not.
Well, so did you think he'd be a box-to-box goal-scoring attacking midfielder?
I mean, that's where he used to play for his country. We used to have this conversation all the time about Granit Xhaka. It's not just Mikel that saw it. Everyone.
He's never been prolific though, and last season he was. And he was impacting the final third. I think that's the idea. Yeah, you could say maybe a little bit higher, but as an actual attacking midfielder, 7 goals, 7 assists. I think that matched, you know, someone like Pogba's tally or something like that. So it's very good numbers there. So my point is, Mikel has seen players in the past that are misprofiled, as you just said yourself, transform them elsewhere. So if let's just say Havertz had been misprofiled at Chelsea and he wasn't a false nine or whatever, he brings him to Arsenal and finds the right position for him. Why can't he explode?
I think it's a good point. And I'm definitely intrigued to watch this one play.
You got Terrace gone.
SG here says my computer's getting a little bit crazy on me right now, so I apologize about that. I'm back. Sorry, my computer went a bit crazy. It says Havertz, the new Bergkamp standards on the floor. Again, I wouldn't take certain people on Twitter too seriously. Even Babs, I love Babs, but I don't take him seriously on Twitter. It's one of them ones. Babs' Twitter is not the real Babs. We're going to come back to Arsenal.